Hey everybody, if you have an XR series mixer and you've been wondering how or where you find an EQ to apply to your aux sends, I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Let's go! Okay, this is a question that I get all the time, is where is the EQ for the bus? And if you're new to this program, I completely understand why you don't know where it is. So let's just quickly look at what we've got going on here. This is just a typical session. And when I raise this fader, you can see I have my main left, right selected. So this is my main mix. Over here are your other destinations, your other sends. Your buses are the same as your auxes. So bus 1 is aux 1, bus 2 is aux 2, 3 is 3, 4 is 4, and so on. That's by default. You can change where these go in the routing, but traditionally this is what we're talking about. Bus 1 is aux 1. So how do I EQ bus 1? I've already done my EQ for my mains perhaps, but I need to do something different for bus 1. It's probably a speaker on stage and you need it to sound different than the front of house. Well, as soon as you select a destination over here on the right, a master fader pops up for what you've selected. So you can see I have bus 1 selected and now I have a master fader for bus 1. If I highlight this master channel, we now see it reflected up here, and these tabs actually now correspond to this bus master channel instead of our other channels. So now I can EQ something here, and this is an EQ that is only for bus 1 or aux 1. It's completely separate from my main left right. If we click there, you can see here's an EQ that's available for your main left right, but then back to bus 1, completely different. So that's the first and the most traditional and the quickest and easiest way to EQ one of your buses. Here's the other way you can do it. If you come up to the Effects tab, you see you have 4 effect slots. If you're not using one of these slots, you can actually set it to be an EQ. Dual True EQ and Dual Graphic EQ both have an A and a B side, just so you know. So what you could do is insert this on your bus, and if you use one of the 2 EQs that have an A and a B side, you could actually insert this on 2 buses. So here's where we would insert it. Let's say, just for the sake of this argument, I'm going to insert the A side on bus 1 and then the B side on bus 2. So here we would change this to be bus 1, we would change this to be bus 2, and hit the insert button, and then we would actually turn these on. So now this EQ is set to be an EQ for bus 1 and bus 2. And because it's a dual-sided, I can have completely independent EQs for each side. So on side A, I could make a couple of adjustments here, and those are not reflected on the B side. If I switch to B, you can see it's still flat, and now I can make something different over here. And if we jump back, you can see they're completely different. So now my bus 1 has an EQ based on the A side, and my bus 2 has an EQ based on the B side. That's the other way to get an EQ onto your bus. And just for note, if you click this AB link, then it links the 2 sides of the EQ, and whatever you do to one is done to the other. So now if I jump over to A, you can see A and B are the same. So here's the other question I get all the time. If I have an instrument, so let's look, I've got a microphone here on 1. If I have an instrument and I've EQ'd that instrument or that microphone for the house mix, for front of house, how do I EQ it differently for a bus send or an aux send? Technically the answer is you don't, but you can. If you are not using all of your channels, if you have a small show, you can actually duplicate the input on another channel strip. So right now I have my microphone physically plugged into input 1. But what I could do is if I had another channel empty, let's just say 2 for the sake of argument, I could highlight the channel, come up to the input, and then under analog input, instead of it being on 2, I actually set it to 1. So now both of these channel strips are taking input from the same physical input, which you can see is input 1. You can see my signals are the same here. So now what I could do is select the first channel, and I could EQ that for front of house, And then on the second channel, I could EQ the exact same instrument a completely different way for my bus send. And if we jump between the two, you can see that they are different. Now, obviously, this means you have to have extra channels available. If you don't, then this probably isn't an option for you. Here's something else you could potentially do. So let's just look at our mic 1 again here. And let's say I'm going to send my mic 1 also to the first bus, to my first aux. So I'm going to choose my first aux, and obviously I'm going to send signal there. But what I could do is come back to my channel here, and I could go up to the sends. And instead of having it set to either post or pre-fader, as it generally is by default, you can actually send it by input or pre-EQ. So what this means is it takes the signal from the input. If you do this one, it takes it right after the input and the gain. And if you choose pre-EQ, it takes it before the EQ, meaning you would have the input and the gain, and you would probably get your gate, but it would skip your EQ and it would skip your compression. So if you do that, any EQ you add to the actual channel here, so again, this is, what we're EQing our microphone for front of house. But now if we jump over to bus 1, let's just reset that. We are now sending that microphone signal to bus 1, but it is skipping the EQ that we set on the main channel. So if this was the only instrument you had in this aux, maybe you're like a one-man show or a two-man show, and you've just got a vocal in one wedge. You could now then EQ here and have a completely independent EQ on your microphone from what's happening in the mains. Again, that's dependent on you having a small show. If you are sending more than one instrument to this bus, then this EQ that you set on the bus will, of course, affect anything that's in that send. It's not just going to affect the microphone. But at least that gives you a starting point that is completely different from what is happening in the front of house mix. Something else to note, when you're looking at the EQ for one of your aux sends, you actually have the option here to switch it between a parametric, like you see here, or a graphic EQ or a true EQ. So that gives you a little bit more finesse if you want to fine tune the EQ you have on your aux send. You can also switch on an RTA so you can actually see what's happening on that bus send, which if you are new to EQing, this might actually help you find some troubling frequencies that you can pull out. When you see the troubling frequencies really starting to hit high, you know that's a good place to start making some adjustments. There you go, a quick and easy tutorial on how to get an EQ onto your aux sends. I hope this was interesting, entertaining, educational. If it was any of those three things, please consider liking and sharing and subscribing. You can also check us out on Patreon, or you can even join the channel down below. If you do any of those things, it helps the channel in a huge way. So thanks in advance. And until we see you next time, thanks for watching here on Quick and Easy Quickies. Bye everybody.